Hi, 5th and 6th graders. Here is Chapter 3 of Inkling, and I miss you guys. Chapter 3. While Ethan was at school, back home, the ink splotch was exploring. From the top of the doorway, it peeped into Peter Reliance's studio. Pen in hand, Ethan's dad hunched over a big sketchbook on his drafting table. The sight of that sketchbook sent a shudder through the ink splotch. It remembered pulling free and how the thirsty pages had tried to pull him back. The book seemed to frighten Mr. Reliance, too, because he kept leaning back and shaking his head and making loud grunts. Once he even pounded the book with his fist. He hadn't yet drawn a single thing on the blank pages. Cautiously, the ink slid down the hallway, high up the wall, keeping watch for the cat. Inside Sarah's bedroom, it flowed over to the shelf of books near the bed. The ink liked books, like normal books, not that terrible sketchbook. The ink seeped over one of the covers, easing part of a colorful pig, and then slipped inside the pages. It was an alphabet book, and the ink moved across A's and D's and J's and absorbed them, and practiced making the shapes on its own as it slid around, erasing words and pictures. It left the book completely blank. Next, there was a sticker book filled with happy faces and sad faces and all sorts of emojis. The ink slurped these up, too. Then came a book about babies. It was one of Sarah's favorites. The ink splotch seemed to like it as well. It poured itself over pictures of kittens and puppies and baby kangaroos peeping from the pouch, human beings being cuddled by their mothers, and the last picture was a mama gorilla with a baby gorilla holding onto her back. The ink absorbed that one, too. With all this new ink, the splotch felt very energetic and swiftly finished off a few short chapter books, practicing all its new letters and words on the now blank pages. It was learning a lot. By the time the splotch had swelled up and was rolling itself lazily across the floor, it lurched out in the hallway, sticking close to the wall because it hadn't forgotten about the cat, and returned to Ethan's room. After a bit of rest, explored the insides of Ethan's chest of drawers, socks, underwear, t-shirt, nothing very interesting. But top of the chest of drawers, however, was very interesting. It was cluttered with all kinds of strange things, playing cards, colorful multi-sided dice, and a shark tooth, and a model of a volcano with lava hardened on the side. Propped against the wall was a bulletin board, and on it was tacked a picture of Ethan and his mother, both smiling. The ink flowed onto the photograph, slowly lapping over Ethan and his mother, erasing them both. Then the ink paused. This was important, but it didn't know why. Only that it was. There was something the ink was supposed to do, something it was supposed to find. What was it? The ink seeped away, pausing, as if looking back at the photograph it had erased, and then it flowed to the floor and over to the illustration board where it had rested last night. Next to the illustration board was a crinkled piece of paper covered with words. It was actually the first page of a story Soren had written for the graphic novel. This was the script that Ethan was supposed to follow when doing his drawings. The ink moved across the text. It didn't just take the ink inside. It took the story, too. The ink pulled itself onto the edge of the illustration board, and for a moment it was still. Then it nudged forward and erased Ethan's work, all of it, smears included. All it left were the borders of the panels that Ethan penciled stick figures. It rested thoughtfully for another moment, and then, with a tiny black tendril of ink, it began to draw. Last period was math, and Mrs. D told them to get out their textbooks so they could review their homework. Mind elsewhere, Ethan started paging through his text. He knew he was deep in trouble when the graphic novel project. He needed help. The few times Dad had actually given Ethan a lesson, Ethan worried that his father was getting impatient, and worried even more that his father was disappointed in him. He'd say things like, "You'll get better with practice," or "You can't really teach art." Ethan hoped that wasn't true because he needed to get a lot better and fast. He needed his father to teach him to draw tonight. When Ethan got to the right place in his math textbook, he stared in confusion. It looked like somebody had painted a thick, wavy white line across both pages. But it wasn't paint. It was nothing. Part of the book had just been erased. It hadn't been there last night. That weird bug thing. It had done it. "Ethan, would you start us off with question 12? Ethan looked frantically at the textbook. Question 12 was gone. His eyes flicked to his exercise books where his answers were written. You were supposed to show your work, but Ethan hardly ever did. I got 18, he said. Good. Now, can you tell us how? Yeah, he said, and then guessed. I took both sides of the triangle and squared them, and then, yeah. This isn't even a question about triangles, Ethan. She started walking towards him. Did you actually do your homework? He panicked and slammed his textbook shut and tried to make things better by giving a big stretch and yawn. He lifted his exercise book to show Miss D. He could see the answers. She glanced at it, but then opened up his textbook, and she stared at the erased pages. This is school property, Ethan. Other students are going to need this book next year. I don't know how that happened. See me after school, please. You're going to need to fill in all the missing words and numbers, and very neatly. Aw, man, said Ethan. Down the aisle, Vika smirked at him. And after class, Soren came up to him, his forehead creased with concern. You're going to work on your graphic novel tonight, right? Yeah, as soon as I finish detention, he said. Soren looked around and then overheard as if someone might be hanging there ready to drop. Everyone else is a lot further ahead. Hey, it'll be fine, said Ethan, adding 2 exclamation marks. His plan was to go home and ask his dad for help, a kind of crash course in drawing gorillas and, well, drawing in general. Hey, Ethan! He looked over to see Heather Lee walking towards him shyly. Maybe something good was actually going to happen today. Oh, hey, he said, feeling the heat in his cheeks. Hi, Heather. From her bag, she pulled an envelope. I was just wondering if a party, she was going to invite him to her birthday party or something? If you could give this to your father. Ethan's hopeful smile disintegrated, and he plastered a fake one on top. Yeah, sure, totally, I'll give it to him. Heather beamed. Really? Thanks so much. I love your dad's Kren series so much. I've wanted to write him a fan letter for ages. Okay, 5th and 6th graders, I only read half of that chapter because I know they're long chapters. I don't want to wear you out. But here is your response question. So now the Inkling is eating like pictures and words and creating blank pages in books. What do you think the Inkling wants to do with all that information and ink? Send me your responses. Miss you guys.